Ever wondered how did they get there? We all look at other folks who have had interesting careers and wonder, how do they do that? And if you're especially curious about becoming a clinical or consulting psychologist, especially, this episode is a super unique one, and especially for you. And that's what we'll be talking about today with guest Dr. Cedric Williams. Welcome, Dr. Williams.
Hi, Mira. It is so good to see you. Thank you for having me. Excited to be on here and to have an opportunity to be able just to dialogue with you and have a conversation about, my journey, but also other people's journeys and some things that they might think about along the way. So I appreciate you having me. It's great to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. And those of you who are joining and those of you who might be listening later on, I was just rushing back to back, one thing after another, nonstop. This was not my ideal situation, and I came late for Cedric, but it's like the last thing I want to do for Dr. Williams here because I respect him so much. But you know what? Sometimes these are the days, right? It is what it is, and here we are. And I'm so excited to have you here. So welcome to you. Welcome to everyone else to the Hard Skills Show, where we discuss how to develop the most nuanced and challenging soft skills needed to drive significant systemic change to make a real impact through your leadership. I'm your host, Dr. Mira Brancu, and so I want you to be ready to take notes. I always do. Reflect deeply and identify at least one small step to further develop your hard skills muscle. Now, today's topic is around career building, but within specific kind of journeys. And it helps you with mapping your strategy, whether that's a leadership strategy, a career strategy. It's aligned with season 3, mapping a strategy for ourselves, right? So let me describe a little bit about why Dr. Williams is here. Why him? So he is the founder and CEO of Legacy Consulting and Research Group. He's a licensed clinical and consulting psychologist, and he's going to be sharing his own very interesting career and leadership journey that he described in his book, Brick by Brick, which is a great book that I highly recommend. Brick by Brick is about becoming a clinical and consulting psychologist, and he's going to share that as he moved from military service member to clinical psychologist, to consulting psychologist, to business owner. Some of those things actually overlapped. And I think that's always interesting for people to know how you do that, what he scrapped, what he kept, and then why and how you can do it as well, right? Dr. Williams works with clients delivering executive coaching and consulting services focused on leadership development and culture. And he was an infantry officer who has served soldiers and families in the United States Army. Thank you for your service. 20 years of service.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Thank you for that introduction and the support. Yeah, it's been a privilege and quite the journey. So grateful to be here.
Absolutely. Okay. So out of curiosity, I'm going to start with like a softball icebreaker, just also because I'm curious. If you couldn't do what what you do now, if you were to just sort of dream up a new career for yourself,
I dream up a new career for myself. Okay.
yeah, what would it be?
What would it be?
Yeah.
Ah, um, yeah, I think that this is like the struggle that I've always had. It's like I feel like I have so many different interests.
Yeah.
Uh, but if I was to pick something and not be a psychologist or a professor or yeah, I think that I would probably be a cowboy. Yeah. Yeah. So
Well,
growing up,
this
yeah, I know.
surprises me.
It's so wild. Or so like growing up, I would like I'm from like the rural Midwest, which I'll kind of get into this maybe later on when I start to tell a little bit of my story. But I just was like obsessed with like reading stories about the Wild West and stories about cowboys and Native Americans. And so um, all growing up, like I was just like I would always wear cowboy hats and like jeans and chaps, and my mom would be like, "You have to wear something else, right?" But I loved just those stories. And I think that if it was up to me and if I wasn't doing this, I think that I would be like a rancher. I love nature. I love animals. I absolutely love horses. So I was actually with horses this past weekend. So yeah, so I think that if I was not a psychologist, I would probably pursue um, working at some ranch or owning my own ranch and having
So
horses.
interesting. Do you
Yeah.
ride?
I do ride. If I don't like, I have ridden horses. I wouldn't say that I'm like the person that's like taking out the weekend and riding horses, but
Yeah.
if I have an opportunity, yeah, definitely feel very comfortable on horses and exploring.
And would you ever combine, like, a lot of people do equine therapy, like they combine the horse with coaching or,
Sure.
clinical therapy. Would
Yeah.
you ever?
I don't know if I would ever do equine therapy per se, but I would just love to be able to have the opportunity for coaching clients or clinical clients to be, to be able to have like a facility that would have that. So I would love to have a ranch and do that type of work. But yeah, yeah. So if you were to ask me that, that's what I would do. I would probably want to be out in nature somewhere with horses on lots of acreage of property and having a good time. Yeah,
That's awesome. For me, I think because as a kid I was always buried in books, I would probably go back to that. And I do like writing. I don't have a chance to write as much or read as much, especially like fiction.
sure,
So I might lean into writing, children's books or mystery novels, things that I enjoy reading myself.
sure, sure.
Isn't
Yeah.
that funny when we bring back all the things that we enjoy as children? We think
As
about like,
children, yeah, it's just like wanting the opportunity to play again. So like when
yeah, yeah,
I think about that, I think about play. And if there
yeah.
was opportunity to play, that's probably what I'd be doing. So it's a great
Well,
question.
yeah. Well, tell us about how you've played with your career. You've had
Oh,
quite an interesting journey.
yeah.
What were the pivotal moments? How did you get to those?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that I would probably have to kind of start backwards of not necessarily my own career, but my parents. My parents are from the south side of Chicago. And in the early 80s, they moved to a rural part of Illinois, into like kind of like a small agrarian community, and my brother and I were raised in this place. And so like I always tell the story, like my dad and mom, like, some of their first jobs were like selling roses off at this like the street, like, like at the stop lights and stuff like that. They would sell roses or newspapers or things like that. And my brother and I, like, we would walk beans and detassel corn. Right. And so like a very cross-cultural experience for my parents and I, and my brothers. Um, and I would say that experience of them moving from the inner city to moving to a more rural community was actually a big part of my own narrative about work and my own narrative about becoming, and just the experience of really thinking deeply about what am I doing here? How did I get here and where am I going? Right.
Mm,
And I think for me, that was one of those pivotal moments. And so growing up in a more agrarian community, uh, I would say also that, we had some some great coaches, some great teachers along the way that really, I think, like paved the way for me to think deeply about career development. I had a guidance counselor that I would say was a pivotal point in high school that really believed in me and was asking me some really serious questions about what is next. It just so happened that 9/11 was my senior year of high school. And
oh,
when
wow.
yeah. And so when 9/11 was my senior year of high school, it kind of like shaped my trajectory. I ended up going straight into enlisted into the Army infantry and volunteered for airborne school with another couple of buddies from high school. And we had actually been teammates together in like junior high and high school. And I would say that that was a pivotal moment. So like my senior year, 9/11 happening, and then going into the the infantry as an 18-year-old, I would say that that was one of the most significant pivots for me into really thinking about leadership, because that was like the place where I learned a lot about leadership. I learned a lot about like leadership and followership, and
Mm.
truly trying to be someone who is serving others. And I think that some of the leaders that I met at basic training, or the leaders that I met in my drill sergeants, were very formative in my early career, and still are, right? I still think about them as being um, pieces that are people that have really put the pieces together in me, the type of leader that I would like to become, and the career that I eventually have landed in as a psychologist.
Yeah. Well, we're reaching an ad break, so let's stop there before you go into the next piece. But before we get into the ad break, a quick question.
Yeah.
Did 9/11 inspire you to go into the military, or were you already planning and then 9/11 was kind of like the sort of inspiration to keep going?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I come from a military family. So there's 6 boys in my family. 4 of us have served in the military. In some ways, I think that we consider it a part of the family business, right? Like we're a part of the family business. And so I think that there was always a desire to go into service.
Mhm.
Um, but I don't think that I knew exactly which service, which branch I was going to go into. And I think that in 9/11, when I had another person, a part of my community, who said, "I will go with you," that was very solidifying. And
Mm.
it was a very meaningful year for my senior year. And but yes, I would say that that was one of the pivotal moments into becoming a psychologist.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so when we come back from the ad break, let's get into how that happened, that sort of shift
Yeah.
into psychology. You're listening to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Branco, and our guest, Dr. Cedric Williams. We air on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern. If you'd like to join us online right now, we are live. We can answer in real time. You can also find us on LinkedIn or YouTube at TalkRadio.nyc right now. We'll be right back with our guest in just a moment.
Are you a conscious co creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on TalkRadio.nyc.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Branco, host of The Hard Skills on TalkRadio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on TalkRadio.nyc.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business, or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on TalkRadio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Welcome back to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Branco, and our guest today, Dr. Cedric Williams, who is author of Brick by Brick. becoming a clinical and consulting psychologist. And he's also founder and CEO of Legacy Consulting and Research Group. So we've gotten through right up until your history and pivotal moments here, as you were starting to think about psychology. And the first thing that actually interestingly came to mind for you is leadership, not psychology. A lot of people who are psychologists come to leadership after they've been a psychologist for a while, and maybe they were supervising people, and that's how they sort of learned about, right? But for you, because you entered the military, you started exploring leadership first. So how did all of this sort of happen? The military experience, the leadership experience, and the psychology interest, and starting that?
Yeah, great question. I would say that my time is in the infantry, the Army infantry. Um, it was such a learning curve for me of being with like all different stratus of people. You have people who come from higher social economic status, lower social economic status, and we're all together, right? We're all together, serving one another, serving our country, trying to figure things out and be good teammates to one another. And so I think that watching some of my initial leaders when I first got into the military was really helpful, and watching them be like really trying to teach us about being good servants to one another, showing respect. And so leadership was really emphasized from the very, very beginning. And it was something that I always found interesting. Like I think even just like playing sports growing up, thinking about being a leader, my parents were, they focused a lot on leadership and kind of character and moral development. But I feel like in the military that was kind of enhanced even more. So I was always curious. My my turning point from thinking about leadership to psychology actually happened 20 years ago, in 2004 when I was on a deployment in Baghdad, Iraq. So I had mentioned earlier a friend of mine had enlisted with me from high school into the Army infantry, and then we went to basic training together. But we grew up together, and about a month into my deployment, I found out that he had just got done with his deployment, but he was killed in a car accident when he was back home at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And it was pretty devastating for me to hear this news when I was in Baghdad. Like the internet was kind of like really spotty back then, so I didn't hear about it until like days later. So it was very disorienting for me. And then about 3 weeks after that, there was another person we had just got done like, eating a meal together. And then a couple hours later, he was killed. Um, Sergeant Rene Ledesma. And so the combination of those two deaths within 3 weeks of one another, it was very pivotal. It was a strong moment for me of like really trying to understand and trying to think about human behavior, human interaction, human suffering. And so I started reading a lot, started reading a lot of books, started really trying to put together all the things that I've learned as far as like from these disciplines of philosophy, theology, psychology, leadership, being in the military, being far away, in this place and doing the things that we were doing. So I can remember that we had all of this trauma and experiencing all this trauma, but not that many places to like process it. And so I can remember right after Sergeant Ledesma was killed, shortly after his memorial service, I just like took my journal upstairs in the top of this building and started writing. And in that journal, I wrote, "One day I would love to be a psychologist," which I laugh now because I look back at the journal and I actually spelled psychologist wrong. I like didn't put a Y in there, which was so funny. It's just like, yeah, that's on brand. But that was like the beginning of my pursuit of really saying, there's something here, because a lot of the soldiers that were in that situation, I knew they would never step into a place like a counselor's office or a psychologist, but they had to carry on. And so I always thought that I would love to be a psychologist to be able to come back to these types of settings and to work with people who would never step into a clinical office. and go to the work and go where they were at. And so that was really my beginning 20 years ago into the field of psychology, and got really passionate about it. And shortly after that deployment, I entered into, I went off of active duty and went into college and started to pursue it.
Now, out of curiosity, like, how did psychology even come to mind? Was it
Yeah.
something that, like, you have psychologists in your family? Had you seen a psychologist? Did you know what psychology was? Because for a lot of people, it's such a taboo field for some, right? Um, unless they have access to, like, somebody who's a psychologist, or had you just read a lot of books and you, like, sort of had a sense that I'm connecting things that I'm seeing right here in these books. Like, how did you get to that?
So that was it, it's the latter. So
Yeah.
after, those people that I just mentioned, Matthew, Ronquillo, and Sergeant Ledesma were killed. When you're deployed, like, people send lots of different books to you, like boxes and boxes of books. And so, I stumbled upon like some writings by Viktor Frankl. I stumbled
Mhm.
upon writings by John Watson, and in these books, right? And so I would just started reading them, and I was interested. I was interested in how people thought, how people interacted, and that's what really led me to become a psychologist. I had no prior knowledge of psychology. That wasn't something that we talked about. I had never seen a counselor at that point. So it wasn't really on my radar to pursue that. But I thought to myself, like, being with people in their most vulnerable and most human moments of pain, and serving them in that way was something that I felt like I would, even my personality and interests, like, has an alignment. And so that's
Mhm.
what cultivated that initially. But yeah, I didn't have really any prior knowledge to what a psychologist was. Um,
Mhm.
I've been on a discovery journey ever since, right? I still
Yeah.
am learning. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So then let's fast forward to um, consulting psychology. Now, how
yeah,
did you get to that?
yeah. So when I was in grad school, one of my mentors there had a project in a class. It was a class called Marketing Professional Services. And the guy's name was Dr. Ted Kosey, who went on to be like the dean of the school eventually. But Ted had worked at a large organization for years before he had pursued his doctoral degree. And I would continue to ask him questions about what he sees in me. What do you see, like, my, like, me doing really well in? I mean, I have these interests in clinical work, but at the same time, I knew very early on that I wasn't going to be able to see like 30 clients a week. Right. And a lot of the psychologists that I had talked to, they were clinicians, they were seeing lots of therapy clients. And I think I knew early on, it's like, I don't see myself seeing that many people per week. And plus, I love being with people in the work environment. And I like work, and I like speaking, and I like being able to talk with people and really try to advise in different ways. And he was the first person to say, have you ever considered going into the field of consulting psychology or business psychology? And up until that point, I just had no idea what that was. And so he was the person that really got me to thinking about doing something else besides clinical psychotherapy. And that's what really led me into this discovery process of consulting psychology. And in that discovery process, I came to the American Psychological Association, Division 13, the Society of Consulting Psychology. And from there, it kind of just took off as far as meeting different people, kind of finding the people that I felt very connected with in their interest, and got a lot of mentorship along the way of understanding a little bit more about business psychology and how to, what I would say is make a great impact within organizations by reaching lots of different people rather than one individual at a time.
Awesome. So sounds like pivotal moments books, people in your life, mentor types, all of these led you to the path.
Yes.
Just, kind of similar for many of us. When we come back after the ad break,
Mhm.
I'm curious to hear how you pieced it all together for yourself in order to write a book for other people. And especially, um, you know, you talk about professional identity development and formation. That's a big aspect of what you talk about. And so I'm really curious to hear how you've sort of put it together for others to think through their own strategy for career development. So we are reaching an ad break, though. Let's get into that first. And you're listening to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and our guest, Dr. Cedric Williams, and we'll be right back in just a moment.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on TalkRadio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on TalkRadio.nyc.
Were you an essential worker during the pandemic? If you needed to learn stages of epilepsy, did you depend on advocates? Did you use new innovations to cope with mental and neurological issues? Maintaining high quality of life and keeping good mental health are what we all strive for. I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each week top healthcare influencers, professionals, and innovators answer these questions and more. Stay tuned on Thursdays at 5 p.m. on TalkRadio.nyc, and I will continue to be frank about health with all of you.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on TalkRadio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Brancu, and our guest today, Dr. Cedric Williams, who is the author of Brick by Brick and also CEO and founder of Legacy Consulting and Research Group. So we've been talking mostly about your journey, how you got from, high school to infantry to psychologist to consulting psychologist, clinical psychologist, consulting psychologist. We haven't even touched on the fact that you're a business owner. That was a choice too.
Sure.
That was a decision. But like just backtracking a little, I think a lot of people struggle with making their own career decisions. Sometimes it's like general career questions, and other times, because we specifically talk about leadership development and leadership career paths, I think a lot of people would be curious what kinds of things they should be sort of internally checking in with, and internally sort of observing.
Mhm.
Because what I am struck by for you is that you observed in yourself certain interests, or kind of like connections that you made with people, with books, with the things that were happening around you that led you to make some really thoughtful decisions. And I'm not sure everybody's is as attuned
Mhm.
to those things. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, a couple of thoughts that come to mind. I actually really appreciate some of the books out there. One book that's coming to mind is actually Rodney Lohman's book about career assessment. And in that he really looks at assessing, your interest, your abilities, and then your personality. And which I've read the book, but I've also listened to a lot of his talks as well, and some other literature that he has about just consulting and doing some coaching work. And I found that for the first step for most people, I think is assessing yourself, of asking that questions: who am I, and who do I want to become? Um, and when I say become, it's more of like the values that I have, the beliefs that I have, what I want to like really step into as a human being, into which I feel like living like a mission purpose life is important, right? That's part of my own value set. And so I think that assessing your interest, assessing those abilities that you have, those skills that you have, and knowing your personality is really step one. Really thinking about that and doing a critical self-assessment. Sometimes I think people can do that on them by themselves. Other times I think that it's important for people to kind of link up with coaches, or link up with a peer support group, or another career development group, or something like that, to process this in community. But I think that before anyone starts into a career or switches career, does any kind of transitions, there has to be some level of assessment. Who am I? Where am I going? And am I okay with the direction that I'm taking, right? One of my colleagues, Cameron Lee, once said to me, he said, it's not just about getting things done, it's about how you get things done along the way. And that's always stuck with me. It's not just getting something done or changing a career, it's how you go about it that I think is important. And doing that within community is something that I would say is essential. The second thing that I would say is really goal development. What are the goals that people have that they want to move forward in? Is there something that they want to build? Is there a business that they want to start? Is there an initiative that they want to take on? For some people, they might use different words. Some people say goals that they want to accomplish for their life. Some say like, mission that I have for what I want in my organization, or other people might even say like calling, right? I feel called to this profession or this type of work. So I think that there's also a level of understanding the goals. Like, what are you wanting to do and to accomplish? And do you have the medium to be able to accomplish that? That's one of the reasons why I started a business, is because I wanted to be able to have an infrastructure and a medium to be able to accomplish the goals that I felt like were important, that aligned with my values. So to me, that was something that was really critical. And then I would say the third step of thinking through professional identity and development is, do you have a sense of vitality when it comes to being a continual learner in the work that you're doing? So I'm thinking about the work of Christine Porth. I think that she's at Georgetown, but she has a lot of really great ideas and great research about work and thriving at work. But she talks about this idea of vitality and learning in the occupation. And I feel like people who are curious about making transitions, or even where they're going to go in their occupation, is asking this question: do you feel a sense of vitality, a sense of curiosity from your work environment? And I think that exploring that with other people in community, in a support group, in some sort of cohorts, or in some sort of relationship with a mentor or an executive coach or something like that, is really critical, right? Of asking those tough questions and assessing if you're on the path that's allowing that to happen. So those are some of those steps that I think are important as far as professional identity development, that I would say people need to be considering as they move forward.
Those are great. I feel like there's so much packed in each one of
I
these.
know, yeah.
So let's backtrack for a second. So let's go back to assessing self, because I work with a lot of women in particular. People know this about me, especially women in leadership, and especially those who are kind of mid-career. And what I find about their ability to assess their goals and kind of their interests and their strengths is, sometimes because women are so hyper socialized, to serve others, to understand other people's needs and nurture those needs, and to not be quote unquote self-serving or self-promotional or selfish or self-focused, whatever that is. For some of us, we end up being completely lost mid-career once we've done all the things to serve all the people. That it could include children and families as well as people at work and other people's vision. And we've succeeded incredibly well, but we're lost
Yeah.
in terms of our needs, our strengths, and those are the women that often come to me asking, like, I don't even know where to start with what's next for me. I know this is not right and it feels off and and I'm burned out or I'm not unhappy. I
Mhm.
just don't even know where to start. And we start with an assessment, right?
Right.
Because
Yeah.
I could possibly tell them where to start, but maybe an assessment can help us start with like exploring what's inside that has gotten lost.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I appreciate you bringing that up. I mean, even the work that you all are doing at Tower Scope and, you know, the Leadership Academy, and starting with this idea of, well, what when somebody comes and says, what is next, or what do I do, or they have this problem that they're trying to solve, but they're not necessarily sure exactly, like, one, how to solve it, or like if this is the problem or if there's like an underlying problem. I think that that assessment is so critical, of asking the right questions, having somebody who's skilled professional to kind of partner with through this journey and say, hey, look, let's start here and let's see where we go and what develops, and then thinking about the different pieces along the way. But yeah, I think that most people underestimate the power of a really good assessment.
Yeah.
Meant to. And when we say assessment, you know, consulting psychology can mean a number of different things. It could be like, you know, measurable items or questionnaires or surveys that people take. Sometimes it's a series of interviews, right? Not only with yourself, but also with other people who you work with or people who are close to you, who know you. And I think that that discovery process is so rich, um, and really helping people to see all of the cards. Let's put all the cards on the table and see what is going on, and how can we look towards what you want in the future, and see if there's an alignment or a path forward in that. And so I love assessment, right? And helping people to kind of think through that together, because I feel like it is such a rich discovery process that's really helpful for people to be
Yeah.
thinking deeply about their own development.
Yeah. And I also like just reflecting on, again, these three steps: assessing
Mhm.
yourself in terms of interest, skills, personality, goal development, and vitality. Those three things, it's not just for your own career decision making. Like, you
Yeah.
could apply that to any process in your personal and professional life. And especially, like, you and I work with leaders, right? And we don't just do like career development stuff. We do lots of executive coaching and team development and training. And so I especially appreciate this last piece about, you mentioned a couple of things: vitality, curiosity,
Yeah.
and doing a lot of this in community, which I don't hear a lot of people talking about. So I just want to like highlight,
Yes.
when we hear assessment and we hear coaching and we hear like thinking through your strategy we don't often hear people recommend working in community, but that is like really important. Tell us a little
Oh,
bit.
yeah, absolutely. I feel like learning in community and with cohorts of people is just so critical to career development. And I think it's critical for just um, helping people uh, to toggle between really tough decisions. And I think that when you are in learning cohorts, there is something that is just so unique and special about that, of being with people. Of course, a skilled facilitator is one, but also people who are in your same setting in life or a similar setting in life, to be able to say, hey, are you wrestling with this too? And how are you coming to the decisions that that you are the solutions to those decisions that you need to make, right? And moving together. And I feel like being able to do that with a supportive community is invaluable. And I think that all throughout my time, whether it be in the military, whether it be as a professor, whether it be through a business, owner, I have found that there is deep value in learning with a community of people and traveling together. I think that sometimes when we get off the path from our goals, is because somehow we have, went through some sort of deformation of that professional, right? Some of Griffith's work, but it's really staying in that community that I think helps you to stay on that path and be very clear. And honestly, I think it's helpful even as far as like our ethical decision-making process too. And so I feel like that there is a lot of value sticking with the community and learning in that way.
Yeah, yeah. We're reaching ad break, so let's take a pause and just like take all of that in. And when we come back from the ad break, I'd like to sort of close out with this connection between identity and community. I think there's something really big there beyond just career decision making that is really important for people's development over time. So let's close out with that when we come back. You're listening to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Branco, and our guest, Dr. Cedric Williams, and we'll be right back. Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Branco, host of The Hard Skills on TalkRadio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on TalkRadio.nyc.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on TalkRadio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on TalkRadio.nyc.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on TalkRadio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to The Hard Skills with me, Dr. Mira Branco, and our guest, Dr. Cedric Williams. So we started in a place where we just talked about, a career journey, a leadership journey, from a high school student to serving in the military to clinical psychologist and consulting psychologist. But where we landed, I just think is really interesting, that piece of vitality and community is ultimately what we seek, and we don't know. We don't realize that that is what moves us forward, right? Without vitality, we're burned out, we're feeling empty, we're feeling lost. Without community, we might not receive either the support or the feedback needed. We might be functioning in a vacuum, which is not realistic for humans. And so I'm really curious, Cedric, like, what are your thoughts on, our identity and career paths when it comes to this vitality and community piece? And you're on.
Yeah, I would say that one of the things I'm thinking about, like my first year of grad school, my first class was called ANOVA, Analysis of Variance. And inside of that class, I met three other people, Dr. Jolgen, Dr. Tyler Greenway, Dr. Paul Flores. And it was in that class that we like really built a friendship. And those guys still to this day work with me at Legacy. And that community and that learning that we have been able to kind of do together, I would say is really invaluable. And I think that for people who are listening and thinking about building their own community is you want to find people who will tell you the truth. You want to find people who will tell you the truth about yourself, who are not intimidated by your degrees or your achievements, but people who really do are with you and for you. And I think that there is a lot of value in that. Sometimes, like that's going to be with peers or other people in your profession. Sometimes that's going to be people who are from other disciplines, right? And sometimes it's a multidisciplinary effort in order to really grow and have that development. And so I think that that's been one of the things that has been so beneficial is being able to have people who are with me, who are for me, who I trust, but people who will tell me the truth and to help me correct and to help me to adjust and adapt as needed. And I don't think that you can't subcontract that out. You can't replace that, right? Like you really do have to find people who are going to go with you in the journey. And I've done some, my own coaching along the way and asked, partnered with other coaches, partnered with other executives and say, hey, like as an executive, as a business owner, I need help. Will you journey in this season of life with me? And I would say that that's been really invaluable and helpful.
And how does that inform or help, I should say, help with vitality?
Yeah, I think it helps with vitality because when I think about vitality, I think about being alive and invigorated. And I think that when you are always taking the posture of a learner, it allows you to remain curious and allows you to be able to have interest. And when you have so many different inputs from other people, I think it begets that curiosity, right? Like I find myself when I'm in community that I'm reading more books, that I'm listening to more podcasts, that I'm having so many more suggestions of, hey, have you tried this? Have you thought about this? And I think that for me, that is where that vitality comes from, of having all of those different inputs that propels me forward, right? It makes me think deeper. So I'm not staying at the surface level, but I'm going even deeper onto the content of really trying to understand or become better at, this skill or whatever it may be that I'm putting my, putting my effort towards. And I think that being in community and having those vast amounts of inputs is just critically important for having a posture of vitality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So pulling it together, here's my takeaways. I'm curious about your one takeaway that you'd like people to move
Yeah.
forward with. Mine is that what I heard in this conversation is you don't have to have all the answers for where you're going in life. You just need to be open and curious and having a learning mindset, and that will provide you with kind of the guidance, and then be surrounded by people who are willing to influence you towards change. So I'm curious, what would be your takeaway?
Yeah, I think that my takeaway, just like, talking with you today is, I think that it's important for people to find their people who will commit to being with them through the journey.
Hmm.
Through their occupational curiosity, through their ups and downs of, in your professional life. Like we have things that are really hard. Like life can be hard and life can present some challenges for people. And I think that having people who exhibit empathy and who will encourage you to be the best version of yourself and at work and beyond is important. And so I think that finding those people that are excited to partner with you in those endeavors is critical. And I have found that being with people in community, in professional communities, in coaching communities, and facilitation and guidance, learning and education that's ongoing, to me, that's been something that has just been invaluable. So my takeaway for anybody would be to find a community or that you can be a part of, or find cohorts or whatever it may be that is going to best serve you in your occupational journey, because I feel like it's critically important.
Absolutely. I love that. Where can people find you and learn more about legacy and more about your book, Brick by Brick?
Yeah, that's a great question. So people can find me at Legacy Consulting and Research Group. Our website is www.legacycrg.com. That's us right there. And then people can also find our team and learn more about the work that we're doing at Formation Publishing. Yeah. So that's us. This is my book, Brick by Brick, and it's been a great journey. And we're happy to partner with people and to talk more about their journey and the work that they're doing. Like, we're really excited about this next season, and happy to be a part of people's journey as well. Thank you.
Awesome. So, audience, what did you take away? And more importantly, what is one small change you can implement this week based on what you learned from Cedric? Share it with us on LinkedIn. You can find us there too, right? And at TalkRadio.nyc, so we could cheer you on. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, all over the place. But LinkedIn is where I live online and social media. I'm pretty sure that's where you live too, Cedric.
Where I live. Yep. I'm there.
All right. So find us there and follow us. And in addition to being a live show, The Hard Skills is also on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. These shows are put up, and the recordings go on there in about a week to 2 weeks. Go subscribe, leave a review, share with others to help increase our visibility and reach and impact. The stuff we talk on this show is part of our research-based strategic leadership pathway model that we teach in our TowerScope Leadership Academy, which is a private coaching and learning community, folks. That's what we've been talking about. And this community is for socially conscious leaders in healthcare, academia, tech, and STEM industries looking to make a greater impact. To learn more and apply, you can go to gotowerscope.com and click on Leadership Academy. There's also a QR code here if you're watching. Thank you to TalkRadio.nyc for hosting. I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, your host of the Hard Skills Show, and thank you for joining us today, Dr. Cedric Williams.
Thank you for
having me. We really appreciate you. Absolutely. Have a great rest of your day wherever you're tuning in from, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.